going all over the UK with the ambassadors that I'm speaking to. The next ambassadors showcase is with Barry Clark of Dunedin Consultancy. Barry is based up in Scotland and ambassadors for the Scottish meetings for us, and was previously an area leader in and around Glasgow as well. I've known Barry for a few years now, having first bumped into him at a business show up in Glasgow, and we've become friends along the way. So always a pleasure to talk to Barry, always a pleasure to talk to him about his take on sales, which he's going to share with us now. Hey, again, I am here today with Barry Clark of Dunedin Consultancy, for networking ambassador, previously for networking area leader based up in Scotland, just outside Glasgow. I've known Barry for a few years now, since we met at a business show up in Scotland. So before I talk too much, Barry, tell me about you. How long have you been involved in for networking?
So, for networking journey goes back probably about 3 years now, Stefan. I joined for networking as a member at 4N Falkirk, back in the old face-to-face world. As a real novice to networking, it was a funny situation. You know, I knew from my old corporate life that, particularly when I'd started my own business, I needed to build my own audience. I needed to get out and networking, but I don't mind sharing. I used to hate it. I used to absolutely hate it. And I guess it comes down to two things. I am a natural introvert. The extroverted introvert is probably the best way to describe me. So the idea of walking into a room full of 10, 20, 30 strangers is my idea of hell. And in my old corporate days, I used to avoid it like the plague, or I would be the wilting sunflower in the corner of the room. Oh, I've got that really important email I just need to answer. That was me. Of course, the thing is, I hated networking because I didn't understand it, and I hadn't learned how to make it work for me. So yeah, 3 years ago, joined as a member at Falkirk. Second meeting, I think it was, took on a team role, became the old I think marketing coordinator it was at that time, or group coordinator might have been the title. And hey, look, a couple of years later, area leader, running my own meetings, building my own little empire in the west of Scotland. And then, of course, everything changed a few months ago, and now part of the ambassador team.
And it wasn't, obviously, it wasn't anyone's fault that everything changed, but it affected your primary business as well, didn't it? The massive change particularly in the hospitality sector, where I know you've got huge experience.
Yeah, very much so. Two sides to my working life, Stefan, and one of those is doing quite focused consultancy and business development work in the hospitality world, and that comes about because that was my old corporate life. Spent 30 years working in hotels, literally from washing dishes as a 15-year-old up to executive level, boardroom level, and it's still do quite a lot of work in that field. Most of my time in that world, certainly in the latter years, was working as a troubleshooter. So I was helping underperforming businesses to turn around. And you know what? The two really big lessons I learned, which have also become a big part of my for networking life, the underperforming businesses that I used to go into, it was all about disengaged people, and it was all about a lack of sales culture. And when I addressed those two factors, the profitability within the business would come. And that set me up very nicely for the work I now do through Dunedin Consultancy, both very focused in the hotel world, but also generally in the business owners, the SME business owners that I meet on my networking journey. And that's where I help people to get engaged with their people, build a sales culture, particularly for the individuals I meet through networking, helping them to build their own selling skills, so that they can promote their products and services and build their businesses. So yeah, it had a huge impact in the hospitality world. Ironically, it's had a little bit of a positive impact in my kind of general practice work, because I've had some of those contacts through my networking life who've come to me in the last couple of months and said, you know what, I think I need your help more than ever now. So can we do some work on my selling skills? Can we do some work on my sales processes within my business? So very thankful that I've diversified into those two different areas that I work in. And it's, for networking has been a huge part in helping me to develop that general practice side of the work. So I've got my really focused niche stuff, and I've got my kind of, it's almost like a medical doctor having these GP general practice day-to-day stuff.
And do you think, or do you know that's a challenge for a lot of people who go networking, that they know their stuff, but they don't know how to sell their stuff, if that makes sense? Is that a challenge for a lot of people?
I think it's gauging from the conversations I have with people. It's a huge challenge for so many small business owners. And I think you described it really well there. So many people that I talk to, um, they've gone into business, they've set up in their own enterprise because they're really good at what they do. If they provide a service, if they're a coach or a therapist, or if they produce stuff, if they make wackets, widgets or whatever, they're really good at the day job at producing what they produce. But then I find so many of these people have had little, or in many cases, no exposure whatsoever to actually having to market and sell directly to their clients. And so many people say to me that they've got the capacity to do more, they want to grow their sales in their business, but they just don't know how to do it. And strangely, this might resonate with a lot of people that are watching this interview. So many people say to me, I don't want to be that pushy, hard, salesy person. And the funny thing is, because they're fixated on not being pushy and overbearing, in many cases, that's exactly what happens, is that they do become quite pushy and quite salesy. And it's just because people haven't worked on the skills, the processes, and in many cases, just building their own confidence to actually sell the product that they produce.
And that's, I think, I mean, part of your role as ambassador is to sell for networking memberships, and people seem to enjoy buying stuff. I often wonder why people are so scared about being seen as someone who sells something.
Yeah, it's funny from the conversations that I have with many people. I think there's often an association, and we'll have to blame it. Maybe we'll blame the media for this because the media is always a good scapegoat. When I think to the average person, and to so many people that I meet through phone networking, as soon as you say that sales word, what comes into your head? And it's probably a picture of a Del Boy type character, that kind of street market trader, the Arthur Daly character for those of us that are a bit older. And I think we often associate those characters, the chancer, the pushy, I'll sell you anything, Del Boy with his broken Korean dolls that speak Japanese or something. We all remember those funny episodes. And I think subconsciously people often associate that with themselves. Now, you said a really interesting word there in that last question. People like to buy stuff. And that to me is the real core of being able to help people to grow their business and sell more of their products and services. It's not about selling your stuff. It's about identifying the right customers to talk to and helping them to purchase. And it really is as simple as that. It's not the first time I've sat down in a deep dive or a discovery call. And when I say that to people, they're like, no, that's too simple. It can't be that easy. But actually it is. It actually is that easy. And in many ways, the ambassador role really, really demonstrates that. Because when we get somebody as a visitor along to a 4N meeting, they experience a great meeting. I think maybe once in my probably 18 months, 2 years of being an ambassador or an area leader, I think I've maybe once had somebody turn around to me and say, nah, not for me, I just didn't like it, didn't enjoy it. Out of the dozens and dozens and dozens of people that I talk to, I think I've only had that once. I get a lot of I need to think about it, I'm not sure. That's fine, that's great. I can have a conversation, I can keep the conversation going when you say that to me. But actually the trick about an ambassador, or in the old world area leader, about selling memberships to people is just helping them to purchase. It's about helping them to come on board. And it's really just about getting them to see the value of what they're investing in. And, I openly say, I've said it many times before, 80% of my customer base has come through phone networking. So it's fairly easy for me to demonstrate that value to somebody.
I think the person who said to you, no, it's not for me, one of the things that really amuses me about selling is that is the worst that can happen. Literally, the worst that can happen is that someone will say, no, it's all right, thanks for that, but not for me at the moment. And that's, I think people are a wee bit scared of that rejection sometimes. I know I was, because when I started this journey of self-employment, this was the first time that I was selling myself. All of the rest of the time, I'd always been selling myself without really knowing it, but I was selling someone else's product or service. And I think that's somewhere where people start to lose confidence, where their own business is all about them. Do you think that's the case?
It's a funny thing, yes. And it's a journey that I had to go on over the last 3.5 years since I set up on my own, Stefan. I was People sometimes ask me, why did I call the company Dunedin Consultancy? Why didn't I call it Barry Clark Consulting or whatever? And it comes down to what you just said. I'm an introvert at heart. So when I set out 3.5 years ago, I was quite determined. I didn't want to make the business all about me. I'll create a brand, I'll create a fancy company name. And the introvert is saying, no, it's not about me, it's about the business. I suppose that's probably harkened back to my old corporate life, because it wasn't about, well, it was about me, but I didn't feel as though it was about me. It was about whatever corporate brand it was representing. The reality is, it is all about me. In my training, coaching services, in being an ambassador with 4N, it's all about me, because I'm building the rapport with people and building the level of, they get to know me, they get to like me, the trust comes and develops. And that's when people are ready to make a purchase. So actually, I had to go through that mind shift that actually it is all about me. And I don't regret naming the company something else, because actually I'm now often get asked, why did I call it Dunedin Consultancy? So it starts a conversation, and then I can move the conversation forward from there. So it actually is all about us, and it's about having that confidence. And like you said, what's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody will say to you, no thanks, it's not for me. Okay, that's fine, that's fair enough. And that in itself, I think, is also one of the biggest hurdles that in the networking world, but also in business. One of the biggest hurdles that hold people back is that fear of rejection. And actually, none of us like to hear no, but is it the end of the world? As a good friend of mine always says, has anybody died? Has the world stopped turning? And as long as you can answer no to both of those questions, it's okay. And I think it's funny, one of the things that I teach my clients is that not everybody is going to be your customer. Not everyone will buy from you. And actually, I encourage people, if no really does mean no, if the customer's got no need for your product or service, if it's not going to give them any value, if coming to networking isn't going to help somebody to build their business and make new connections, then actually it's not going to work for them. And it's better to recognize that, and then actually to gently filter those people out. So the people that do get what you do and do see the value and want to, will gain benefit from it, focus your efforts and your attentions on them. So yeah, I know we're all great advocates for networking here, and because networking's done a lot for us, I definitely fall into that category. But there are those odd one or two people out there that just don't get it, and because they don't get it, it probably won't work for them. Better to filter them out. When you get the, I'm not sure, it's quite expensive, will I get the return on it, will I get the value back on it? Those are the people to put your effort into, and having a conversation and building some rapport. And when I say to people, look, 80% of my client base has come from 4 Networking. I probably wouldn't have a business today if it hadn't been for me joining 4 Networking. That's usually enough to convince people. And our joining offers are so good anyway that, ultimately to join for a few months at 20 quid a month, it's not like you're breaking the bank. We're not asking people to sign away thousands of pounds without knowing what the business, what the organisation is going to deliver for them. So it's a really low risk choice that we're asking people to make.
It's interesting because what you're saying there, you absolutely believe in the value of this, and so when you come from a position of asking people if they want to join, you absolutely genuinely believe that's going to be a good thing for them. And I believe as well that's where sales starts, that you have to absolutely believe that this is the right thing for the person you're talking to, and you have to be honest enough to have that conversation if it's not the right thing for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've known in my professional life that I've turned around to people in a sales conversation, and actually, okay, there is a particular closing technique that you take away the product. No, this isn't for you. and actually what you're looking to do is convince the person that actually it is for them. That's a very specialist niche technique. But there have been situations where I've turned around to people and said, look, everything you've told me that you're looking for, I don't know that this is the right product for you. And I'll be really, really honest with you. If you're looking for X, Y, Z, actually what this is going to deliver for you is ABC. So maybe it's not the right thing for you. Because I've learned through my corporate life that there's nothing worse than cajoling a customer to come on board when it's not the right thing for them. You might make a first sale, but you'll never make a repeat sale in those circumstances, because the customer will learn pretty quickly that, well, this isn't working. And it's a bit like if you put petrol in a diesel car, it's just not going to work. There's no point. And it comes back to that fundamental thing there, that not everybody is going to be the right fit customer for you. And it's okay sometimes when it's that scenario, it's okay actually to say, this isn't for you. I don't think this is the right product to give you the solution you're looking for. And that's bravery. It takes bravery to do that.
It's really interesting because I had exactly this same conversation with Mark Northall of marknorthall.com in the interview that I did with him, and only put out there yesterday. That seems to be a recurring theme, that actually being successful at selling stuff is often about recognizing when you're talking to the wrong person and being honest enough to tell them that. I was going to ask you why you choose to be involved in 4Networking, but you've said 3 or 4 times that you get 80% of your business from 4N. So I'm guessing that's the case. But before we wrap this up, which we'll do in a minute, what would be your biggest tip for someone who's just joining 4Network? And what would be your biggest tip for someone who's where you were at 3 years ago?
Okay. My biggest tip would be come with an open mind, and come to meetings regularly, consistently. Find the meetings where your ideal customer is hanging out. That's about knowing who your ideal customer is, and then find the meetings where your ideal customer is hanging out. And when you're there, this is the real tip. This is a really important bit. Don't come trying to sell, because the reality is nobody's there to buy. We don't go networking with, I've got my checkbook with me. I want to. Very, very occasionally that happens, but on the whole, we're all there to meet new people and looking at the bigger picture. And so often, and it's usually because of nerves and because they don't know any differently, I see a lot of new members who come through the door and they get disillusioned quite quickly because they've not made any sales. Now, I don't mind sharing. It took me about 12 months to secure my first piece of paid business directly through 4Networking. But I had the persistence, and I had the big picture, the long-term vision to persevere, because I wasn't there to sell. I was there to build relationships, and I had the trust and the confidence that the sales would then come. So I don't go to meetings overtly trying to sell to people. I'm going to meet new people, to make new connections, and then I know that the sales opportunities will present themselves.
And before we go, thank you for that. If people want to find you, it's going to be easy enough because I'm going to tag you in this. But you run a Facebook group as well, don't you? Which I think is free, and you give sales advice in there.
That's right. I've got my own Facebook group, Leading You to Sales Success. And you'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me hanging out in all the 4N groups. You'll also find me, Barry Clark, on Facebook. And yeah, come along. Join in with Leading You to Sales Success. Quite a fun group. We've got about 200 members in there from all sorts of different businesses. So in itself, it's quite a nice little closed networking group, because there's all sorts of different people, and it's a safe space that people can say, oh, I've got a question, actually, I'm not sure about this. And then also a couple of times a week, I give my own kind of tiny teach topic of the day slots as well, where I just share some of my knowledge and experience to try and help everybody, because we're all on the same journey at the end of the day. We're all small business owners. We're all right now operating under unusual, strange terms. We're all having to adapt and change our businesses. For some, it's really tough. For some, it's actually going quite well at the moment. I know there's people at all ends of the spectrum. But yeah, it'd be great to see people there as well. And you'll see me certainly around all the Scottish 4N meetings, and I tend to pop up in a few other places as well.
I spotted you yesterday at the Unlock 2020, which I was at earlier on in the day, and I've just seen you comment on LinkedIn that you were there later on in the day. I think you had a session there in the afternoon.
I was doing one of the seminar sessions later on, yeah, during the day, and it was good to see quite a few foreign members in there as well. It was, from all the feedback I've heard, it was a really good event. I think everybody really enjoyed it.
Barry, thank you very much indeed. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. So thank you very much. And people can find you up at 4 Networking in Scotland. Thanks for that.
They can. Stefan, always good to chat to you. Thanks, Dan.